We finally have a pretty massive update that's coming to the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X consoles. That's right, Microsoft just announced that they've upgraded some of the memory constraints and graphical performances and boosts for the next generation consoles. Let's get into everything that's being said because this is being directly confirmed by Microsoft themselves and all the developers working with the consoles. Let's get into all of it. Alright, so you know the drill. If you like the content, hit that subscribe button and that like button. And if you want to be notified on future videos, hit that small little bell icon. And if you want to go that extra mile to support the channel, hit that join button. Alright, so you know that for the longest time that the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S are pretty powerful consoles. Yet it seems like for the last year and a half or almost 2 years that the consoles have been out, that they needed to get the hardware and the software to work collaboratively and be together and so they can make games look better. And that's something that's been struggling with third-party developers. That's something that a lot of people have talked about when it comes to the Xbox Series S matching that fidelity that other games and other consoles can produce. Yet even though it's a smaller piece of hardware, it is still extremely powerful because of the components within it. And it's even getting more powerful with Xbox confirming that they're bringing better features and more memory to the console, unlocking it within the system. In fact, let's just get into what Xbox and Microsoft are confirming that they've done with the new SDK. Microsoft gives Xbox Series S devs more memory to improve graphics performance. Microsoft is giving Xbox Series S game developers more control over memory on the console. A new Xbox software development kit has been released to developers recently, and it frees up more memory for developers to access for Xbox Series S games and boosts performance in certain titles. Hundreds of additional megabytes of memory are now available to the Xbox Series S developers, says Microsoft's game dev team in a video detailing the updates. This gives developers more control over memory, which can improve graphics performance in memory-constrained conditions. Alright, now that as somebody that has complained about Xbox not really utilizing the hardware within these consoles, I'm happy that they're still working hard at getting these things at the best fidelity and the best performance they possibly can on these consoles. Because let's be real, games that are launching at 1080p 30 or 1080p 60 should not be happening at all with the amount of hardware and power within these consoles. Dying Light 2 had a 1080p launch. Guardians of the Galaxy had a 1080p launch. I don't like that, especially for the Xbox Series X. But when you go to the Xbox Series S console, we all know how powerful it could be. Yet everybody buys that because they know that they're going to get 1440p or 1080p at 60 to 120 frames. Yet recently, they haven't been matching that and they haven't been giving that type of performance to these consoles, especially the Series S consoles. So Microsoft understands this and they brought out an update to make this easier for developers to make games at higher fidelity. And I have to say, usually when you see videos people saying, oh, boosted performance and graphics, they're kind of pulling you around. But right now, this is a direct report from Xbox and a direct report from the development kit that is being brought out to other developers, and they're putting this out so developers and other people understand that they're working hard on making the console the best it possibly can. And for the price, I gotta say, the Xbox Series S is an insane console, and it's something that's brought up here and all of their specs in the article. The $299 price tag for Xbox Series X launched as a console capable of 1440p, gaming at up to 120 frames per second, but many games have only hit 1080p and without the higher frame rates of the more powerful Xbox Series X. Microsoft's larger and more powerful Xbox Series X console ships with far more GPU power, but it also has 16 gigabytes of RAM, while the smaller Xbox Series S only has 10 gigabytes of RAM. Developers have to work with around 8 gigabytes of memory on the Series S, as Microsoft reserves around 2 gigabytes for OS tasks. Okay, so let's jump into that. The one thing I said before the console's released is that the CPU and the GPU are going to be vital for what Xbox does. If the Xbox Series S didn't launch with almost the same CPU as the Xbox Series X, we would be in trouble. Getting that console wouldn't do anything for you because it's all about performance this generation. Xbox talked about it, PlayStation talked about it. It's about the performance and the frame rates that give you immersion within these games. So when you look at the Xbox Series S only having 10 gigabytes of RAM comparatively to the 16 gigabytes, it's a massive gap that Xbox needed to fix. Because let's be real, the Xbox Series S is selling like crazy. A lot of people are going to buy it, and if you want a decent console at a decent price to get into the next generation, it's the perfect companion console for you. You can main it on your Xbox and it's great, but if you want the best performance with the best graphic fidelity on console, you go the Xbox Series X route. And of course, we all know if you want the best performance and you're geeky like me, you get a big PC and you get all the big parts and all that. But we're talking about consoles right now. But that gap between the 8GB and the 16GB is something that needed to be closed. And I'm glad that they're doing this, because even on the Xbox One X generation, if you remember, Mike Ybarra and a bunch of other people that were working on that console actually gave more memory to the developers because they were asking for it. And I feel like this is the tale of that tale, is that the developers went to Xbox, they enjoy the Xbox Series S, they enjoy how big the sales are for that console, and so they want to hit certain graphic fidelities within that small powerhouse of a console. So Xbox is working with them to get that memory up there and make the OS less demanding on tasks. That's going to be the big issue. I think that the OS for Xbox needs a lot of work. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of weird, but I feel like it's a little sluggish. I feel like they need to make it far more efficient, and I think taking away memory from it might help, because it's going to force them to make it less demanding on the console. And that memory constraint is what people are talking about and developers are talking about, so I'm glad Xbox is doing that by taking things away from the OS and putting it into the games, which is something that's brought up right here. Those memory constraints have been detailed by Digital Foundry, with developers reportedly feeling some pain around optimizing games for the Xbox Series S. It's less the CPU and GPU power of the Xbox Series S, particularly as the Series S has the same CPU as the X, but more the memory situation. Microsoft's improvements, albeit small, could help reduce some of that friction around developing games for the Xbox Series S. Now that's what I'm talking about. I've said this before, that the CPU is going to be the most important thing this generation, and if Sony and Xbox cheaped out on the CPU like they did last generation, we would be stuck in the same development cycle of people bringing out 30 frames per second games. But now with the CPU being equal on the Xbox Series S, they can move around a little bit. They could do a lot better, because yeah, the GPU is great, but overall, putting things down graphically helps you get better frame rates. That's what they're going to be doing. It's easier to take something that looks amazing, dumb it down a little bit, and then get better frame. But if you don't have that CPU to push those frames out, no matter what you do with the graphics, it's not going to matter. You're going to get that 30 frames. So that's why I'm glad that they're bringing up this memory issue, because the developers aren't talking about the CPU. They're not talking about the GPU like I detailed before. They're talking about that memory restraint. And that's going to be the hurdle that Xbox needs to work on with the Xbox Series S. And it's going to be something they're working on for several years, at least until the whole thing is out. I'm talking about for like the entire generation. They're going to try to make it the most efficient console out there, because it is selling like crazy. And a lot of these games that are coming out are very demanding. We're glad that the CPU matches the Xbox Series X. That's going to help with this generation. It's going to help them get games on there. But overall, when you look at the comparisons, when you look at people bringing out console comparisons with their games, and developers even bringing out console comparisons and technical details, you know that the Series S is always on the bottom half of that. Yeah, it matches sometimes what the PS5 is doing, but overall, it's a little machine that could do so much more, and Xbox understands that. So that's what I love that they're changing. Not to mention, it's great that Xbox is being self-aware about what's happening with the memory issue on the Series S, which is brought up right here. Microsoft has also addressed an issue where graphics virtual addresses were being allocated considerably slower than non-graphics virtual addresses, which means Xbox games can now take better advantage of other recent memory enhancements that Microsoft has added to its Xbox developer tools. Fingers crossed this all means we'll see some improvements to performance in some games running on the Xbox Series S soon. Now, I do have to admit that I think a lot of these changes are great, but it's going to take time for developers to start implementing these changes and using this memory. I know that sounds kind of weird. You think that they could just plug and play and go on, but if we've learned anything from this generation and even last generation, it's going to take time for developers to actually allocate this memory and use it in ways that they see fit. Not to mention run different algorithms, run different things on the GDK. They're going to have to go through this thing and go crazy on it. The game development kits are great, but Xbox seems to have have started over with this generation. I know they have x86 architecture, that's great, but overall, their APIs and everything like that seem like they needed a restart. And that's why developers are bringing out games sometimes at 1080p, because they're not really optimizing for the Xbox Series X and S consoles. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these optimizations and a lot of these crazy things that the consoles can do once we start getting only on Xbox Series X and next-gen console games. I'm talking Starfield, I'm talking Redfall, and I'm talking about the next several years where Xbox games and third-party games are only going to release on the next-gen consoles. I feel like developers are waiting for the consoles to sell far more millions of units so they can get a better base of customers on the console to sell more copies of their games. And hey, I'm not going to blame them. I understand that wholeheartedly. I know you want more people. I know you want more games out there so people can buy those games. But overall, it's going to take a very long time for people to start utilizing this and for developers to start utilizing what these consoles can do. And it's good that Xbox is working on the back end. I'm sure Sony's doing the same thing. They're trying to allocate resources to make games look and play better on their console. Because at the end of the day, that's what these machines are for. They're here for gaming. They're not here for the OS to be taking up memory. They're here to make the games look the best they possibly can and perform the best they possibly can. And I'm sure Digital Foundry is going to go into it once games start utilizing this memory, and we might see some performance jumps in the Xbox Series S, but overall, be patient, understand that this takes some time, and if this generation has any indication of anything, it's that a lot of these developers are working hard to get these things up and running as fast as possible, but it's going to take a lot of time. I can't wait till we stop seeing 1080p games on these next generation consoles, and I want to see some 4K 60 FPS games, and I also want to see some ray tracing being utilized. Overall, the tools need to mature. It's going to take time. But hey, we're all here, we're waiting, and not to mention, not many games are coming out in 2022, so it doesn't matter either way. But let me know what you think about all this. Are you surprised that Xbox is still allocating memory to more games? Do you think this is a good thing that Xbox is finally listening to some of the developers and what they want? Do you think that the OS is going to suffer and be sluggish if they take the memory away from it? How did Xbox do this? Are they taking some of the memory just to put in games, or are they really going to take the hit in the OS? Let me know what you think down below. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button and that like button to support us out the channel more than you know. And give me a follow on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there talking games and sharing my latest videos. Plus, I love interacting with everyone there, so get on Twitter and let's talk about gaming. Also, follow me on Xbox Live. My gamertag is Zalker87, just like my channel name. See what games I'm playing, and let's compete in achievements for the month. Alright, so you know what I've been playing this entire time. It's Multiverses. I can't stop playing the game. Again, I'm playing it on my Xbox a lot. I was playing it on my laptop over the weekend because I wasn't home at all. But man, that game just took over my life. I absolutely love the game. I think it's one of the best games to come out this year, bar none. It reminds me of Apex Legends, how it kind of shadow dropped and kind of took the gaming world by storm. I've been watching like professional players play at EVO 2022. I've been just going crazy on it. I have over 35 hours on the game. I keep playing with buddies. I keep playing solo. I just have a lot of fun. It reminds me of Super Smash Bros. When I was younger, but I feel like it's better than that. I know that's kind of weird and blasphemous to say, but I just feel like it's better, and I can't wait for Season 1. I can't wait for Rick and Morty to come out. I can't wait for a lot of things. This is going to be one of my staple games from here on out. It's going to be like Rocket League, Siege, and Apex Legends, where I just keep going back to it because, hey, I like playing it, and it's a multiplayer, not to mention it's competitive. Tell me if you've played this Multiverses game. It's free to play. I bought the Founders Pack. I'm having a blast with it. I can't put the controller down. I keep playing it, and I'm glad that it came out in a year where gaming seems kind of slow. So yeah, that's helped me a lot in 2022, and I can't wait for all these other games to drop, but right now, Multiverses is filling that void. But let me know what you're playing. Are you playing something on your Xbox Series X, your Xbox Series S? Are you on your PS5, or are you on your PC playing something? Let me know down below, because that's what we're here for. It's to talk games. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.